Hello, my name is Silvester Henderson, and I am the CEO for Professor for Life Incorporated, and I am so honored this early morning to interview Professor Dr. Frank Lee Harper Jr. He's a professor at Cambridge Corporate University, as well as a professor of management science at Swiss University of Applied Science and Institute, I believe in Vietnam. So I want to welcome Dr. Harper. Thank you, Dr. Harper. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor. It's an honor to be interviewed by such an esteemed interviewer. And again, the pleasure's all mine.
Thank you. Dr. Harper, could you introduce yourself to our digital media world? Tell us where you grew up, share your academic journey, which is enormous, and where did you attend college? I was looking at your professional accomplishments, and I was saying, my God, I done retired, but I need to enroll back in college.
Well, I grew up in the inner city of New Haven, Connecticut. And my neighborhood was rather unique because I lived in an area that was, it was a high crime-ridden area. The police labeled it a red zone, but I could take a 10-minute walk and be on the campus of one of the most prestigious universities in the world, that being Yale University.
Wow.
And so, in fact, from the 5th grade to the 12th grade, I attended a college prep program sponsored by Yale University called the Ulysses S. Grant Foundation. And that's where I got my, the idea that I thought I could go to college, because I'm a first generation, high school graduate and college graduate. And so also, what also kept me out of trouble is I was pretty good in sports. And so you had that combination scholar athlete thing going on. And so that sort of kept me out of trouble. And then even in the neighborhood, when people see that you're a little bit different, they make sure that nobody messes with you and all that kind of stuff there and push you forward and all that kind of stuff there. And so from there, I graduated, top 4% of my high school, got a couple of scholarships. I started off, I had a couple of missteps. I started off at Purdue University and did a brief detour to a historically black college, University of Virginia State College then, but now it's university. And then finally, I ended up finishing my matriculation at the University of New Haven in New Haven, Connecticut. And that's where I got my, I did my bachelor's in computer technology. And then I graduated from a dual master program where I got my MBA in marketing and a master of science in industrial engineering.
Wow.
Then I worked for about 20 years, working in corporate America. I retired from corporate America at the age of 31, and started my entrepreneurial journey. Okay. And then I went, after about 20 years, I decided to go and enroll and get me a doctorate. I had my fiance at the time, she said, well, you should get your doctorate. I never even thought about it. Okay. And so I thought I would have to, get into a school program. And then that's when I discovered that you could actually get a doctorate online, self-directed study and things of that nature there. Okay. And so I spent the next 8 years working on a Ph.D. in administration and management it started off as Columbia Pacific University. They had some issues, and so they transferred to Columbia Commonwealth University. Okay, and so that's where I got my PhD in administration and management. I wrote this great dissertation, about 330 pages, called "Effective Leadership for Enterprise Commerce Management."
Wow. Okay.
And so that allowed me to, I took that research and I just worked for, very leading and bleeding edge companies. I developed the reputation of being a turnaround expert. And so I did that for about 20 years. And then I wrote my first book. I wrote my first book, and it was entitled Agile Leadership with a Grip, a 21st century journey from street hustler to strategic hustler.
Oh, I like that.
Okay. And so, and then one of my goddaughter told me, says, you should take this book and you should create a Facebook page for it. Okay. And so that's what I did. I created a Facebook page for it, and lo and behold, I had eventually grew to over 165,000 followers from over 35 countries worldwide. One of the biggest respondents was in Egypt. And so I'm a member of the LinkedIn community. And so I'm looking at LinkedIn, and all of a sudden this gentleman comes across my screen, Professor Dr. Hossam El-Shalzi. Okay. And what caught my attention, he was a former presidential candidate for Egypt. And so I reached out to him. And I told him what I was doing. I told him that I had this book. And he said, well, listen, what you do, send me a copy of the book. And so he said, send me 2 copies. So I sent 1 copy to his address in Switzerland. And I sent another copy to another gentleman I think it was in Egypt. And so I just forgot all about it. And then probably about maybe 2 months later, I got an email from him, and he says, well, why haven't you responded to our email? And I said, well, I never got it. Okay. And so finally he forwards the email to me. And what they did is they read the book. They loved it. And what they offered me is a teaching position, okay, as an assistant, as an associate professor of business administration. And the rest was history. And the difference with this school, it was corporate education. And I fit right into it because in addition to working in leadership roles, I was also a corporate trainer. Okay. Wow. And the difference between corporate education and traditional education is this. The whole curriculum of a corporate education is to improve the organization. And so students come there with specific problems. Those problems could be within the company. It could be a small, medium business enterprise. It could be within the government, and on. Whereas traditional education, the focus is on the individual. Okay, the focus is on the individual. I want to get a Ph.D. Because I like to do this. Okay, it may not solve a specific problem within the organization, but they get that degree so that they can maybe go somewhere else to solve a problem or teach. Whereas with Cambridge Corporate University, you can't get into the school unless you identify a specific problem within your country, within your organization, or etc. that you're going to solve, and then it has to get signed off on.
Wow.
And so I did that for I've been doing that now for a little over 12 years, and it's amazing because it allowed me to really network. And so, for example, I'm a visiting professor at Swiss UMF Applied Sciences Institute. Okay, it's located in Geneva, but I teach with an organization called Ideas, which is in Vietnam. Okay, Ideas stands for Institute of Development and Exchange Services for Applied Sciences Applied Sciences Institute. And so what happens is I teach executive MBA students that live and work in Vietnam, but they're getting their degree, they're getting their EMBA from Swiss UMF. Okay, and then I do the same thing for another university called Swiss Business School. And so I teach different subjects. I teach, for example, with the Swiss Business School, I teach corporate social responsibility and international business law. And then with the Swiss UMF, I teach global strategy artificial intelligence and project management, digital business management, and cross-functional leadership.
Wow. Well, that kind of, you know what? Wow. That kind of helps us to go into the next question. Can you describe some of your work as the provost, and I think you were a member of the board of trustees for Cambridge Corporate University located in Lucerne, Switzerland? Could you tell me something about that work as the provost and member of the board of trustees?
Well, let's start off with the board of trustees.
Okay.
The board of trustees has a fiduciary responsibility. Okay, they have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the school is compliant, risks are mitigated, and it's governed appropriately.
Okay.
Okay, and also as being the vice chancellor and the right hand man of the president and chancellor, we developed what we call, it's a very innovative corporate education model. And we expanded that. We expanded that model. It's all based on online education from 19 countries to over 25 countries worldwide, and still growing. And so as the provost, I look at the overall academic affairs, okay? Curriculums and things of that nature. So for example, we started a new school, okay? A new institute, research fellowships. And all of these learning and development vehicles are geared toward technology, artificial intelligence, robotics.
Wow. That is very, very unique. And that really helps sort of interface into how the world is moving now. Now, let me ask you, Dr. Harper, as the provost, do you directly interface with faculty or primarily administrators in general, or both?
Both.
And how do you offer effective support and guidance to some of your academic professors?
That's a great question. I practice what I teach.
Okay.
and so I wrote a book on leadership and management, okay, in the 21st century. And so that book basically presents a framework of world-class leadership mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets. And so when I am working, with these individuals, because again, you have professors that are from different parts of the globe. And so the key is to be able to get them to agree on the framework. So, for example, one of the mindsets in the framework is to have an adaptive mindset. Okay. And so having an adaptive mindset could mean different things to whether you're in Switzerland, whether you're in the Caribbean, whether you're in Germany. Okay. And so the key is being able to get them to understand, okay, you have to have an adaptive mindset, but how do you practice and develop that mindset within your particular area? That's where the challenge is.
How do they adapt the curriculum to meet the current needs of students from various geographic regions, per se?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. So for example, in my class, I teach a world class, literally. So what I mean by that is that my lectures, they're all live and online. I may have anywhere from 10 to 20 students. Each one of those students will be in a different part of the world. Okay. In addition to that, they will work for different companies, but they're all pretty high level executives. And so my leadership lectures are more, they're lectures and they're coaching sessions.
Okay.
So for example, one of the skill sets that I talk about is a leader should look to change and challenge the status quo.
That's right.
Okay. Now, the response that you just gave me, they all agree to that. So now what do I have? I have a world class where everybody agrees that yes, that's a good that makes sense. But where the difference is how do they implement that within their region? Whether if I'm in Saudi Arabia, I may do it different. If I'm in Africa, I may do it different. If I'm in Russia, I may do it different. If I'm in the Middle East, I may do it different.
So you have to understand the science of the culture that you are implementing ideas to, even though generally there is a core mission and a core idea. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And that has to be a challenge. Now, as a visiting professor of management of science at Swiss University, what are some of the, I would say out of all the courses, what course would you consider, or would you consider one course more world wide than the other courses? For instance, global strategy, global marketing.
Nope. I would say advanced project management in AI.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is project management is a strategic enabler. You can take an organization, and if you do research shows that most organizations don't execute their strategy successfully.
And that's a fact.
Okay. Also, if you don't execute your strategy successfully, any projects that are birthed from your strategy, the likelihood is that you don't execute those also successfully.
Wow.
Okay. And so when you look at that truism, what is the vehicle that's responsible for changing the organization? The vehicle that's responsible for changing the organization is project management. So you have operations, which is focused on running the organization. But if you're going to thrive and survive in this new millennium, that organization is going to have to go through some change steps. Optimizing the organization, modernizing the organization, okay, transforming the organization. And the only way that's going to happen if you have a mature project management function and capability to do that. Because project management ties the strategy together, that is the direction that you're going. And then it also ties all the things that you do in order to realize the strategic objectives of the organization.
Wow. You know what? As you're talking, Dr. Harper, I'm thinking I'm very involved in the faith community, and I see so much dysfunction in the faith community organizationally in terms of how the major congregations and churches are moving. And I find that the ones that are really growing are the ones that are interfacing and using technology, and they're changing their whole structure. So that kind of helps me from a vision perspective to understand what you are writing. But what I want to go back to is to have you to share more information about that wonderful book you wrote as a top-selling author. Describe some of the core principles of the book in a little more detail, if you would, please, sir.
What happens? Well, the core principles of the book is that successful leaders, effective leaders in the 21st century have to have three qualities. First of all, they must be flexible. They must be visionary and collaborative. And they must be in control. And so based upon those three qualities, let's look at being flexible. That's where I talk about the different mindsets. And so the mindsets are you have to be adaptive. You have to have a mindset that is adaptive, that is focused on growing, an intelligent mindset. And what I mean by intelligent mindset, you're focusing on both, not only the intellectual intelligence, but also the emotional intelligence. And so when I talk about the intelligent mindset, I describe it in terms of what I call the 6 I's of being intelligent. And those 6 I's include being innovative, having the insight, taking the initiative, being able to influence, have interpersonal skills, and most importantly, integrity. So, and then with learning. Okay, we are in a world where we're in an information age, and so the things that were in your cap to allow you to succeed previously is not true now. Why? Because it's information. Data is the new dollar. Data is the new dollar. So we're looking at mindsets that are adaptive, they're growth oriented, they're intelligent, they're learning, and also they are effective and ethical.
Wow. You know what? Well, they need to nominate you for a World Emmy because you have a lot of knowledge and wisdom, especially around leadership. Because as you're talking, my mind is going in so many different directions about not only organizations, but colleges and universities and leaders who don't get it. You know what? And you see many colleges, people don't know this, but colleges do shrink and sometimes have to go out of business, and universities, because they have a group of leaders or trustees, board of trustees that run the organization. And everybody is stuck. One thing you talked about is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is really an amazing thing, because you'd be surprised how many individuals really don't possess any sense of intelligence in their mind.
Yeah.
You know, they can't fathom being intelligent, even though sometimes they're smart. They're smart, but they're not intelligent. So they don't get nowhere. And people don't realize there's a difference between being smart and intelligent.
Yep.
You know,
exactly right.
Being flexible and learning to adapt. But not for me, but let's get back to who influenced you to want to become a prominent academic and a university collegiate administrator. Did you have any mentor or?
Let me tell you something. Okay. My first leadership lesson was by my Little League football coach.
Okay.
Okay. And so he got the ball rolling. And then I had a mentor. Man, but he was the role model of the mentor. He showed me what it was to be a true black man, a family man, a father. Okay. And he was like a brother, because I didn't want to teach.
Wow.
I didn't want to teach. And so, when I remember I told you I left corporate America when I was about 31. What happened is I was in a dual master program. And so I was working, I never forget, I was working as a project leader at the world headquarters for Pitney Bowes. And so I was on this big multi-million-dollar project. And they put me in a role where I could not exercise my will. And which is what they brought me on, which is what I thought they brought me on board for. Well, to make a long story short, the project that I should have been at lead for lost the company over $50 million.
Wow.
In the meantime, I started moonlighting with this company because my mentor says, hey man, the writing's on the wall. When you start losing that money, they're gonna look for people to cut. They're gonna look for heads to roll. And so what I did is I started working with this company, and we built the first online real-time PC-based financial and accounting system for the software industry. And so I was working with him, and the company was entitled Computer Assisted Training and Technology, CAT Incorporated. And so to pay our bills, we did stand-up training and computer-based training. My mentor was a senior instructor for ITT. And he was the world-round leader in ITT, had what they call a 1230 switching system. And so this gentleman traveled all around teaching people on this system. Well, anyway, we taught all of the disciplines needed for the software development lifecycle. Structure analysis and design, all of those kinds of topics.
Okay.
Well, this one particular assignment, he had to teach it was a 5-day course in the analysis and design using structured and UML techniques. I never forget the course. Okay, and we were teaching it at the Hartford Insurance Group in Hartford, Connecticut. And so he said, what I want you to do is I want you to audit the class. Okay, because eventually I want you to teach. I said, man, I don't want to teach this here. So I went with him anyway, because I want to travel, and I got in the Harvard Insurance Group. So I'm sitting there, and he's doing his thing. He is doing this thing. His mannerisms, the way he handles students, and for me, mind you, I'm coming from the inner city. Okay, I had never seen a black man control people of all different persuasions like that before. And they had the utmost respect for him. And so Monday was fine. Okay, Tuesday, was fine. And so what we would do is after the class, we go work out, and then we go get dinner, and we go through a debriefing. Okay, and so Tuesday, I'll never forget it. We were sitting down and we were talking, and he was real sly about it. He says, "Listen, I got to go home. My wife, is having some issues, so I got to go straighten some things out. So you have to teach the class." I said, "Huh?" I went, "What?" He said, "No, you have to teach the class." He said, "You're going to do great. All the things, all the approaches that I talk about, you do that stuff. Okay? You just have to work on your presentation and answer your questions and all that kind of stuff there." And so, I wasn't no punk. So right. I had to step up. I played football and the captain and all that kind of stuff. So it's time to step up. So Wednesday, I got in there, and you could tell I was a basket of nerves. Okay, but what got me over was when you teach to adults, they resonate on your experiences. And so I taught based upon my experiences. I was able to answer all the questions. And at the end of the class on Friday, he finally came back, all smiling. He said, "Class, how'd he do?" With a smile from ear to ear. And they were very, they were very straightforward. They said he did a great job. Yeah, he was a little nervous, but he answered all the questions. He talked about things that we never even thought we could be able to do. And so that lit the bug. That lit the training bug. So for over, since that period of time back, that happened back in 1988, 89.
Wow. Okay.
And so even when I've been in roles for example, I worked for the international city as the deputy chief information officer, and they wanted to get rid of the entire department and source it out to Big Four consultant firm. And I sold them on the fact that, hey, listen, I can turn it around. And with that experience and other experience, what I've learned is that your greatest leaders are great teachers.
That's great. That's right. That's right.
Your best leaders are great teachers.
That's right. And
so that has been, pretty much the modus operandi that I've been, operating on since this time. Even when I went to Cambridge Corporate University, they really stuck with me, because again, I'm from the Western world. They're in the Eastern world. All their students are from those different countries on the eastern part. But what they saw is that not every instructor, Ph.D., can teach in a corporate environment.
That's very true.
Because what happens is this: they're teaching theory. They're teaching theory. Well, if you've got a CEO, you've got a director, and they have a problem right then and there, okay, and they ask you a question, you can't talk theory. You got to give them some solutions.
That's right.
And so that's how I got into this whole, this whole teaching gig.
Well, that brings me to my next question. It's so enthralling listening to you, brother, talk, because you have so much information. Can you explain kind of some of the differences in earning a degree in the United States from perhaps earning a degree in Switzerland or Vietnam? Or can you talk about some of the requirement differences, the durational differences?
Yes. For example, at Cambridge Corporate University, an MBA program is a minimum of 18 months.
Okay.
Embedded in that program is the students have to revisit and work with 250 case studies.
Oh wow. Okay.
250 case studies, and they have certain coursework, but everything is geared toward those case studies and helping them prepare to write their thesis for the problem that they said they wanted to solve when they first applied to the school.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So everything is geared toward that. Our lectures are an hour. Yeah,
wow.
Lectures are an hour. They're an hour. So in the master programs, again, a minimum of 18 months. Okay, heavily with the case studies, 250 case studies. Our lectures are live. Okay, our lectures are live. So, for example, as I'm talking to you right now, that is our lectures. Okay, now they can, they can record them and things of that nature. There, the material that we use, I teach from my books. I teach from my books. I teach from my own experiences. Okay, and so with that allows me to be able to get through lectures with not only within an hour, but also with content that they're able to, allows them to resonate with themselves and able to be able to apply it. Because I use what's called a 3-in-1 model.
Okay.
And with that, what happens with the 3-in-1 model is for every learning objective or outcome, the student must be able to show that they understand it with 3 real-world objectives that applies to their particular world.
So you compel them to document their knowledge and their experiences from the concept that's being taught.
Yep, and every exercise. What happens is it's like rapid fire. I will tell them something. I will give them an exercise. I will tell them you have 2 minutes for that exercise, and the whole purpose of that exercise is to make sure that they understand what I told them. So, for example, I think of it this way: I tell them what I'm going to tell them, and then I tell them, and then I tell them what I told them.
That's right. That makes sense.
Okay, and so I do that, in a rapid fire manner, and then they have exercises. But then they have all these different case studies. Wow.
Now, how does that? If you can describe to our digital world, how is that slightly different than a United States model in a sense, from your perspective?
Okay, in my dual master program, first of all, 250 case studies, no way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we didn't do any case studies. The lectures were more generic. Okay, they were more generic. Now I went to a rather unique MBA school, because what happens is the professors were practitioners. And so the exercises were geared toward real world business scenarios. Okay, real world business scenarios, and so that helped. That helped in terms of the preparing the student, because at the end the goal is to prepare the student to write and defend their thesis, or write and defend their dissertation. And so the difference is, the focus is on case studies. Okay, in European schools as opposed to American institutions, Also, the classes are a lot more integrated. So, for example, you take Cambridge Corporate University. Okay, we have a number of schools. Okay, we have a school of management science. We have School of Government, School of Finance. Then we have an Institute of Artificial Intelligence, Institute of Healthcare, Language, Culture, and Media. And what happens is through our approach is the instructors pull from all of those. So, for example, okay. I teach a class, Agile Leadership. I've taught that class in 15 different iterations with different content. Pulling from the healthcare industry, pulling from the Swiss watch industry, integrating artificial intelligence, bringing in strategy. You're bringing in strategy. So what happens is I want your students to understand what it means to be what I call a strategic hustler.
That's right.
Okay, I want them to understand what it means to be a strategic hustler. And so they are bombarded with all of these different disciplines integrated into one. And so it's that way throughout the entire, either whether it's a 3-week curriculum, whether it's a 6-week curriculum, or whether it's a 10-week curriculum.
Do most of the courses sort of grouped in that sort of durational format? 6, 8, 10?
Yes.
Okay.
And it all depends on what program you're in. Okay, so we offer a BBA. Okay, then we offer about 22 different master degrees, and then we offer 14 doctoral.
Okay. Wow. As let me ask you this, Dr. Harper. You've talked about so many different things, and the one thing that sticks in my mind is your constant reminding of adaptive intelligence, to be able to adapt and to be able to create a curricular model that has a core mission and a core principle, but it can reach multiplicity of a large group of individuals all around the world. Yep. But I'm assuming that as a man of color, you perhaps may have had some challenges along the way. And I would like to ask, if so, what are some of the challenges that you face as a man of color just in higher education in general, whether it's in Switzerland, Vietnam, Germany, or the United States?
I was taught by my mentor to walk in there like you are the best person in the world. So I don't even deal with that. Okay, I've never had that issue at a higher education. Now, when I teach in corporate America, because I also teach boot camps to help students get their certification.
Okay.
Now I may run into that kind of situation where I will say something and someone will come back and they'll say something else and they'll say something like this, and I say, listen, and I'll say this. I'll say, are we really going to do this?
That's right.
Are we really going to do this? Okay. And then just point out to them, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you. Now, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's your prerogative. Okay, but again, they're you, and I call them grown folk.
That's right.
You're grown folk. Okay, you're grown folk, and you have unique knowledge that I'm not aware of.
That's right.
And so, I'm not going to be naive enough to say that 100% of what I pour into you, you're going to swallow it.
Absolutely.
And so that cuts that out, because again, it creates the culture immediately that I'm there to teach you, but also you're here to teach me.
That's right. Everyone is learning.
Yes.
Now, can you express? Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Can you discuss how do Switzerland and the United States differ in their views on the concepts of equity versus equality?
That's a good one. That is a good one. I happen to be fortunate to work with the president of Cambridge Corporate University, who just passed recently. He is a 2-time presidential candidate for Egypt.
Oh, wow.
And in addition to that, he was he's very astute when it comes to international politics. And so that's why when I talk about leadership, I talk about being effective and being ethical. Okay, very few leadership programs talk about being ethical. Why can I say that? Look at the state of the economy, businessmen. Just look at the United States.
Absolutely.
Okay, you have this oligarchy kind of thing going on. Okay, and so when you have that going on, what is that saying? There's no ethics there. Okay, how can you have somebody working for your organization and to make ends meet, they have to work 2 or 3 jobs and you getting paid millions and millions of dollars a year?
That's right.
That's an ethical issue.
And that's definitely a matter that is found throughout colleges and universities all throughout the United States.
Yep. And I was just reading an article by a gentleman, and he was basically thrashing the business schools, institutes, MBA programs in the United States. Because what he was saying is that if you look at America now, it's that way because that's what you teach.
That's right.
Why would you want to get rid of regulations?
That's right.
Okay. Why would you want to get rid of regulations? Why would you? For example, case in point, there are foods that we eat here in the United States, where in Europe, the ingredients in that same food would not be allowed.
That's right.
That's an ethics issue.
United States organizations don't generally, colleges, corporate world, churches, and all what have you. Everybody talk about greed, but very people talk about the ethics around the greed.
Yep.
They just talk about greed. I want more. I want more money.
Yep.
Want more money. And so, how you go about getting more money, whatever you have to do, that's never talked about.
Yep.
Yep. But that brings me to the point that, going back once again to your brilliant 2 words, emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Emotional intelligence.
Let me tell you something about emotional intelligence. Okay. There was a 40-year study done by Ph.D.s from Berkeley that showed that emotional intelligence was 400% more powerful than intellectual intelligence when predicting the success of an individual.
Absolutely.
And so when you look at executive coaching, there's a big push on neuroscience. Neuro has to do with the brain. When you talk about emotional intelligence, that's what we're talking. We're talking about the brain. We're talking about ego-based fears. We're talking about emotional labor. All of those things, all those components come into play when you start talking about somebody's emotional intelligence. Leadership. Leadership it's all about emotion.
Absolutely.
Your reputation. When you look at reputation, there's 2 parts of it. There's the task and there's the relationship.
That's right.
So when you look at the task, The question is, how well did they do the task? Did they knock it out the park? Okay. But most importantly, the second part is the most key.
That's right.
How do they make you feel?
That's right.
Did they uplift you? I remember I was at a McDonald's, and I was standing in line, and this was, manager was working with this young lady, and and the young lady was, it's nothing like on the job training. Okay, and so the young lady was really, she was a little, unsure of herself. And the manager, the leader, sitting there and is basically berating her. And so I just finally said, listen, young lady, okay, I call it, they're younger than me, so I call it young star. I said, young star, your job is to educate, not humiliate.
That's right. That's right. You know what, Dr. Harper? I could spend days and days of just speaking with you and developing more wisdom, especially around emotional intelligence and looking at curriculum from a more adaptive and flexible approach. But I know that time is precious. So from that standpoint, I would like to ask you if you could share any final thoughts and ideas with our digital world. And I want to thank you for taking your precious time and your wonderful time to share. So I would like to ask you, do you have any final comments or that you'd like to share?
Yes. Remember when I talked about those three parts to leadership? That is being flexible, being collaborative, but the most important part is being in control.
That's right.
Be in control of your goals, be in control of your resources, be in control of interfaces, and being in control in performance. You can do all of those other things. You can be flexible, you can be collaborative, but if you don't see it through, then all of that goes for naught. And so again, it goes back to the statistic that I mentioned earlier, where you have such an abysmal performance in terms of the number of organizations that execute their strategy successfully. And if you're not executing your strategy successfully, then what you're also not doing is any of your strategic initiatives, your projects, your programs, your mega projects, et cetera, they are not also being executed successfully.
That's right.
And so the key is you have to be in control. You have to be in control of your emotions. You have to be in control of your intellect. You have to be in control of your people, all of those kinds of things there. And that's really the most important thing in terms of being an effective leader in this 21st century.
Sir, you are an effective human being, an effective academic, and effective leader. God bless you, and thank you for the interview. And I look forward to collaborating with you and talking to you soon. One day.
Thank you.
Do be blessed and have a positive day. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.